This year I came to somewhat of an epiphany. After doing the legendary Transformers marathon, I realised that it's a lot more fun if you talk about figures that not many people really know about, figures that you want to talk about, figures that are special to you, even if they are a little older. And apparently there is an audience there. So this year I've decided I'm going to throw out all pretense of reviewing new figures, although I still might review a few, and just focus on whatever I want to review, regardless of whether it's new or old, Hasbro, or third party. At least, that was the intention, until I came across this guy. I was on my way to a band rehearsal for a performance I have on this upcoming Sunday. It'll probably be gone by the time this video gets uploaded. But I decided to take a stop at the local Kmart, because apparently, according to some guys on Ozformers, there had been some Studio Series sightings there. And they were right, except there was no Barricade. I was hoping to get Barricade or Clunker Bumblebee to replace my regular Bumblebee. But I thought, you know, maybe I'll get this guy. He might be a decent figure. And I'm pretty disappointed with him. The main reason I'm focusing on just reviewing whatever I want to review is because I really like to tackle a review from a certain angle. What's important about this one figure? What's unique about this one figure? And, well, this guy certainly is unique in a few ways that aren't very good. And that's why I wanted to review him, because there are a lot of flaws that I really want to pick out with him. It's safe to say that mistakes were made with purchasing this guy. But enough of that. Greetings, Cybertronians, I'm DrLockdown, and today's diagnosis pertains to Studio Series World War II Bumblebee. It's a real shame, you know. The year was turning out great so far, but my first retail Transformers purchase of the year turns out to be incredibly shitty. I could have gotten Sideswipe, I really could have, but I stupidly got this thing instead. It's a real shame, a phrase that you'll be hearing a lot in this video. I really wanted it to be good, but deep down from the stock photography I knew something was off. But against my better judgment, I decided to purchase it anyway. And oh boy, this thing is a disappointment. Studio Series World War II Bumblebee transforms into an armoured car, and already we have a problem. This is not the car he had in the film, at all. In fact, I don't believe he ever was this vehicle, even in the concept art. I don't really think this was a licensing issue, because the concept art and this car do come from the same manufacturer. I mean, it's similar to what was seen in the concept art, but what you see in that concept art is far more fitting to the character, given its scout status, and the way more out there design is very intriguing, and I would love to see a toy made out of that someday. So, already in the Studio Series line, a line that, may I remind you, is supposed to give us remakes of previous characters with an emphasis on less kibble and higher screen accuracy, has failed at representing the line. But that said, I have given a pass for figures being inaccurate in the past. Sure, it may be an issue for some, but for me it's not really that bad, provided the figure does something new and unique beyond just being different from the on-screen mode. And unfortunately this figure is essentially the Berserker of the line. Unfortunately, my Berserker is in storage, but what I mean is that Bumblebee is a shell former to the highest degree, with terrible tolerances, panel issues all over, and a general lack of care. A total of 0 parts here make up the robot mode. That's right, 0. The one thing people complain about consistently with movie toys is on full display here, and after getting used to the incredibly nuanced Bumblebee movie designs, going back to this garbage is just frustrating. I'd hoped we'd just left this nonsense back in the last night. But then this toy comes out of nowhere with a blank expression on its face that asks for your money simply because he's Bumblebee. On the topic of blank expressions, his paint is actually pretty bland as well. God, that was a forced segue. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of one of those unpainted tank models you get from hobby stores. I don't have any on hand with me, but the turret from one of those formed the basis for my custom KFC Mugen scope. Yes, I finally made a custom turret like I said I would. Even though I can never forgive the turret, I see the potential of a cool looking tank mode. Actually, I'm thinking of designing a replacement turret, but that's a long way off, to be honest. The entire point of those unpainted, poorly toleranced models is to be stationary in a diorama, or to be used in a tabletop game. They're not supposed to be on a retail toy which you spend upwards of $30 on, and lo and behold, if you take a look at the stock photo, he's depicted with some sort of dry brushing added onto the vehicle chassis. But here, nothing. Not up. I do commend them for not using the horrible shade of brown they used on Combiner Wars Brawl, otherwise it would have been utterly terrible, but then you have all this mechanical detail anyway that should have been picked out with some tamper grass or some paint. I mean, if Siege can offer us passable attempts at weathering, then at the very least Studio Series should be able to give us some silver detail to mimic paint scratching. To be honest, in spite of the colours looking rather good, overall he almost looks like a knockoff, and you know what? He feels like one as well. The other way in which he resembles those tank models is the fact that these panels are far too thin for any Transformer. It's bad enough that the entire alt mode is a shell, but to have the shell itself be incredibly fragile makes it far worse. This kind of plastic baffles me, as hardly any official Hasbro toys have plastic this flimsy. In all honesty, this feels like something a first attempt from a third-party company would come across as, where they lacked the experience of a veteran unlicensed Transformer producer, or the sheer backlog of, I don't know, Hasbro? I'd expect this kind of shit from Impossible Toys or Alien Attack, but plastic this week on an official mainline Hasbro toy that's designed for almost any age? Shame on you, Hasbro. Shame on you. Oh, but it doesn't stop there. The shell gets even worse when you try to tab everything together. Almost every single tab on this alt mode has trouble fitting in. Sometimes it's due to poor tolerances, other times it's due to thin plastic, and sometimes it's a bit of both. The worst offender would have to be the roof. On my copy, it's almost impossible to get it all the way down. Sometimes I can get it almost all the way, but no matter how much I fiddle with the arms on the inside of the shell, I just can't get it to fit properly. I'm not sure if it's just my copy or something that several toys have issues with, but this should not be an issue on a toy. And it's a real shame too, because this idea for weapon storage is brilliant. It just happens to have terrible execution. Also, when talking about terrible weapon storage, the pistol stores on the top, and it looks stupid. Not only that, but the turret is designed to rotate, whereas the 5mm peg that it pegs in with is too loose to make use of it. I get the feeling that they wanted a more realistic gun on the top, but they couldn't due to mandates from Hasbro. It's incredibly stupid, much like the rest of this alt mode. Size-wise, he's about average for a deluxe, but that throws off the scale incredibly. The original armoured car wasn't that big to begin with, and Bumblebee has generally been a very small character in the franchise. Studio Series typically goes for scale, but I guess it's perfectly fine to forego one of the main points of the line, because it's Bumblebee! Look, personally, I don't mind this size, but I know this is going to be a real issue for people, because several people who collect the Studio Series are sticklers for scale, so it's definitely worth mentioning. Also, I haven't actually written it down on the script, but the feet on the front are very ugly here. They were ugly on the stock photography, and they're also ugly here. Why didn't they just fix that? I mean, they're not even the chest. They could have had them fold into the body, but no. Just why would they do this? Ah! So, the good news is I've decided to change the transformation music that I usually use from one from Sonic to one from, I think it's Pokemon. I think it sounded a bit more jazzy and a bit cooler. And the bad news is, well, everything else about this garbage transformation. He is a shell former, a massive shell former. So much is wrong with this shell former. Like, I can kind of understand some characters being shell formers, but this one is done especially poorly. First thing you want to do is take this entire section here, untab it, and bring it up. Like, quite literally, the entire half of the alt mode just goes whoop, straight off. That's just pathetic. Next thing you want to do is untab these, bring them up. You can then get the arms out. They slot into some pegs here. You slide them out, and then you get them out of the way. Works okay, I guess. This is probably my least favorite part because it's so underdone, but you undo the legs, come around here, open this up, get this out of the way, fold in the wheel, bring up the foot, and then get it back in. That sort of shoves into place. There seems to be a locking mechanism, but I can't tell what it is. I really love how the wheel goes in there. It's a brilliant transformation scheme, but they should have done something with the rest of this kibble. Why? Just do something a bit better. Bumblebee, make something of yourself. He's bad. Same thing on this side. You gotta remember to bring the feet up. I keep remembering to bring the feet up. And then you can try to stand him, but he has stability issues already, so I'll leave that for later. Next thing you want to do, bring this up, rotate this around, and then that sits flush against the back. Or at least it's supposed to, because then you bring this around, and that's alright, but I'm not a big fan of that weapon storage, so I usually leave this off to the side. But then, oh no, you've got copyrights over there. So actually what I do is I just leave it in the vehicle configuration, which renders this entire system here completely useless. I don't know why they do such a thing. Oh, whatever, let's get on with it. Take this bit, fold it back. When you bring this up, you can come around here. These sections fold around, or they rotate around. Make sure the arms are out of the way so it can go all the way. It's on this big pole that goes through the entire torso. And then you get these wheels sort of partially in place. These parts fold in, and then you kind of gotta accordion everything in, but the wheels sort of lock into place there. And at the end, you should have the wheels in the backpack and the kibble parts under the wheels. It's a bit complicated and it stresses the plastic a little bit, but it's alright, I guess. Next thing you want to do, make sure Bumblebee's head is back. If it's forward, the automorph won't work, so you push it back, get it pushed up. Once that's done, the arms lock into the sides of the torso. Then you can just bring them down. Bring the hands out. And it all works fine. Until you realize it doesn't stand very well. Yippee! So what I like to do is give him his hammer. There's so many stability issues with this that I'll get into later. But I will say, that is a pretty nice looking robot mode in total. I just wish he wasn't so much of a shell former. You know what, this robot mode is alright when you look at him from straight on. The detail on this thing from head to toe is exquisite. A lot of the paint that I wish had gone into the alternate mode is finally in full force, picking out details and almost making him look premium, except for the eyes. Yeesh. The layers of detail on the torso blend so well. The legs incorporate the wheels amazingly into the shin mass. The arms have several lovely gunmetal sections carefully picked out. Even the tamper graphs look great, although I have no idea what they mean. That is, however, an illusion, as if you rotate it to the back... I can live with Bumblebee being a shell former. Sure, it might have worked better if they hadn't taken the robot that was incompatible with the vehicle mode and smashed them together, but a shell former can look good in the right circumstances. But this... I'm sorry, this is not okay. The backpack is annoying, but the Studio Series line has had a few examples of this in the past. My main issue is with the legs. As said earlier, the wheels folding into the shins is a stroke of genius, but these kibble pieces... not okay. I don't care where you put the kibble, as long as it doesn't go into the legs. You can put the kibble literally anywhere else on the body and make it work. But once you start adding junk on the backs of the calves, it renders all dynamic posing worthless. Calf kibble is the textbook definition of cumbersome, and when even the last Night Optimus Prime has you beat in that regard, you know you done f***ed it up. Unfortunately, it doesn't end there, as there's still a plethora of issues to go through. You'll notice that I've got him posed with his hammer. I'll admit this is a very lovely hammer, and it's very nice to get it out of the box as opposed to having to buy an overpriced Japanese exclusive version or a hard-to-come-by upgrade kit. But the reason I'm not saving it until later is because it's mandatory. I'm quite literally using this for balance, as without it...
Are you f***ing kidding me? He stands perfectly fine when it's on this surface. Wow, okay, here, 1 second, let me show you what I mean. Okay, so apparently when he's on my lightbox surface, he's very easy to stand. But on anything hard, it's pretty much impossible. It's not just the loose hips, which I'll get to in a minute. Every time, even if I move him forward a bit, nope, he just refuses to stand in any capacity. For God's sake, that's just sad. I guess if it's on a soft surface like my lightbox, it's perfectly fine, but on a hard surface like this, nope, nothing.
Having leg kibble is bad enough, but not using it to support the figure properly is a basic rule of Transformers weight just thrown out the window. The rule's simple. Don't put a ton of weight on the back of the figure unless it's being used to support the feet. If you just forget that, it crushes any hope for the figure. I can live with the backpack, I can live with the leg kibble, I can even live with the transformation in some circumstances, but at the end of the day, a Transformer fundamentally needs to be able to stand properly, and this guy can't even do that. I suppose the icing on the cake of utter shit would be the hips. Personally, I think the hip joints are the most crucial for stability, because if these don't work, you fundamentally cannot stand a figure up, and already he has issues standing thanks to the weight issues. But to have loose hips... Come on, man. This is a new low we've sunk to. Honestly, this toy's so bad he's giving me Vietnam flashbacks. Wait, seriously? That's not fan-made. Somebody on the movie team actually thought that was acceptable. What the f***?
Welcome to the rice fields, mother
I don't just dislike this toy because it's bad, I dislike it for what it does right. The vehicle mode could be awesome in concept, regardless of accuracy. The articulation, which I'll get to in a moment, is stellar. There are moments of brilliance in the transformation hidden underneath the shell. The robot mode from the front is so lavishly detailed that I just wish it was done better. I don't usually purchase oversized knockoffs, not because I hate them, but because I don't see the point of them most of the time. However, in this instance, I'd love to see this guy get another chance, under maybe something like Black Apple and Wei Jiang's approach. There's a solid foundation for a stellar figure here, but it's just so easily lost in gripe after gripe after gripe. But so as not to drag this on for all eternity, I'll close with the articulation and size comparisons, which are alright. The head is on a ball joint with some decent upward movement, although with the dead eyes he does seem a tad deranged. The shoulders have standard ball joints, but they get immensely hampered by the huge backpack. The elbows are standard affair with a bicep swivel and a 90-degree bend. I really like that he has a waist swivel, but sadly again it's ruined by the huge backpack. I can only imagine the dynamic poses he would have gotten otherwise. Everything else is pretty much what you'd expect, with ball-jointed hips that are of course loose, thigh swivels, and a 90-degree knee bend. The feet are pretty much locked in place due to transformation. Again, it's a real shame, as I've said time and time again, because this kind of articulation could be a fantastic positive in an already great toy, but it's just brought down by being applied to this lifeless husk. Size-wise, he's decently tall for a deluxe, but again, I don't see that being appropriate for Bumblebee in this line. From my point of view, he should just be a little bit taller than Studio Series Jazz, bordering on Scout size. But I suppose he's got to be a little taller to appeal to the kiddies nowadays. That's what this Bumblebee is at its core. A quick cash-in, with all of its budget sapped out with a giant Hasbro mosquito in order to fill out the other deluxes in the wave. From what I can gather, budget allocation is quite common amongst the movie lines, especially after Dark of the Moon. And this is a classic example right here. This time though, it's different. This time, it's a Bumblebee, and Bumblebees always sell well. Just take a look at the view count. That's proof right there of this character's popularity. Thank f*** I'm not a kid channel, otherwise I'd be breaking a lot of hearts here. You know, I actually have a hypothesis about this. I don't think this was intended for Studio Series. I actually think it was intended for The Last Knight. Now, keep in mind, this is just a hypothesis. This is not even a theory, because I have absolutely no evidence to back it up. But if you look at the style of engineering, and how thin the plastic is and the way it's designed, it just screams Last Knight style. The clunky kibble that's on the back here would not be handled that way in the Studio Series line. Not to mention the alt mode is very bland, screaming for, oh I don't know, some dry brushing in the way that the Last Knight did it with its terrible sloppy paint. Not to mention that the Studio Series is supposed to be about unique and recognizable characters. Even when they handled the Bumblebee movie figures, they were still recognizable. Everybody who watched the movie knew who Shatter and Dropkick were. They didn't just decide to make a figure of one of those random Cybertronian designs, because there aren't actually that many requests for those Cybertronian designs, outside of the very niche fandom who's going crazy over the G1 designs. Yes, it's completely niche. It's not widespread at all. But who was asking for this? It seems like something the studio would have forced out during the Last Knight's run. And especially when the Studio Series line is about accuracy, they didn't even get the right alt mode for it. So, you know, I'm starting to think this wasn't intended for the Studio Series. After all, The Last Knight was a very short line, so they may have cancelled it prematurely, and this might have been a carryover. Hey, we didn't get to release it properly, so let's release it now! Just like we're doing with Cogman, who didn't get a proper release outside of America and some Asian countries. If you think about it, there are three main segments to the Studio Series line. First, there's a segment when it started out where it focused on the first movie characters and a few things here and there, and its main idea was bringing all those classic Movieverse character designs to the screen, ones that weren't given a proper chance. And then of course the segment that we're going into with 2019 is where they start ramping up things incredibly with the quality, focusing on obscure characters, working on Devastator, working on a better Avenger the Fallen Optimus Prime, that Bone Crusher looks great, but between those two titans of segments, there's this middle section that's a little bit off. The Bumblebee designs were rushed out so they don't look accurate to their on-screen models. You've got a million re-releases of Bumblebee for some reason. If you think about it, it's a bit of a transitioning period, almost like they didn't know what to do. And I'm glad they found their footing since. Because honestly, even with all those missteps, I don't think the Studio Series has had a truly bad figure. Until now. This is the first major misstep of the line, and it was bound to happen at some point, but I'm just glad the line has been stellar overall. But with that, I'm done. It's going back into whatever I want to review now. I've got a few other reviews planned for some more obscure figures. Some are obscure, some are not, some are old, some are new. It's whatever I want to do from now on. Also got another Robo Toys box coming in, so that'll probably get turned into an unboxing. Until then, keep collecting Studio Series. It's a fantastic line, and I can recommend everything except Bumblebee. Oh, yes, I forgot to mention. I need to explain what that thing is. If you've been following me on social media, you would have known that I decided to build a Legends shelf to store all of my Legends figures. I've done a bit of cleaning out, so a lot of my collection's up in the attic now, because I needed more space in my room. What? I'm still collecting! I need more space to put more toys! But I thought I'd put my Legends on display back there, as well as Fort Max and Predaking. In fact, how about I give you a little look at it? On the top shelf, you've got the two largest spots that I have, with a few Headmasters from the Junkion Blacksmith, perched on top with a bit of blue tack. It's an interesting effect. I thought they were, unique toys, so I put them there. Not unique toys as a company, they are unique toys. Not company name, like the phrase, unique toys. Predaking is just amazing. I can't wait to get the Shockwave Lab parts for those, because he's just a gorgeous figure. Down here is the MP36 shelf. I'm waiting for the Mars Toys throne, and then I'll probably clear out some other stuff from there. But you'll notice they actually have a few Xenoblade backdrops here. I'm really a big fan of Xenoblade, so I thought it'd make a good backdrop section. From here, you've got the Combiner shelf, both Hashtag and third party. Yes, of course, Hulky's here in spite of him being terrible, but hey, he's a Combiner, he needs representation. The bottom part here are my regular third party Legends figures, and wow, I actually didn't realize I had this many. There's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad, but all of them are fun and they have great memories. And from there, it kind of just avoids into a lot of Legions on the top here, Legions and Classic Legends at the smaller size. But I actually had so many that I had to store some on the other side of the room. Same with the Cyberverse figures, I had to put them over here. But we also got the Legends on the bottom floor, and a couple of customs. I didn't want to put too much there because I had also the power board and I didn't want to cause any fire hazards there. But yes, it's a very nice display that I'm quite proud of. Unfortunately, it's gonna get a lot messier when I keep buying things, but hey, I've only got 19 more figures I need to collect from the Legends and Legions lineup, and then I've collected every single mold that Hasbro has ever put out. Well, Hasbro and Takara, although I don't think Takara put out any exclusive Legion or Legends molds, aside from the Arms Micron, but that's a whole other thing I've got plans later. But that's my time. I've got a Bumblebee movie script to work on. I hope I'll actually be able to get that out. Catch you later.